Everyone loves a loan signing. All the fun of a new player, but none of that pesky commitment if they turn out to be terrible. And Blues have certainly signed some terrible players on loan over the years. That said, we've also had some absolutely brilliant ones. I'm feeling nostalgic again, so let's take a trip down memory lane and reminisce about some of the good ones. You're watching TCFC, my name is Tom, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to TCFC. Today's list is the top 10 Birmingham City loan signings. TCFC. Just before we start, a small caveat. I won't be including any players that we signed on loan and then signed permanently immediately after their loan spell ended, unless their permanent spell had a significant difference from their trial run. Okay, let's go. Number 10, Andy Cole. Oh, Andy Cole. He's a fucking arsehole. Oh wait, that's Ashley Cole. Sorry, Andy. Now you'd be forgiven forgetting that the Man United legend and third highest goal scorer in Premier League history played for Blues. It was very much a cameo at the end of the 06-07 season. Blues were neck and neck with Wolves for automatic promotion, and we needed a little bit of extra quality to get us over the line. In a typically shrewd piece of business, Golden Sullivan brought in the expert marksman. He didn't do much in his 5 games, but his few contributions were pure class. His quick feet and accurate pass provided a brilliant assist in a victory away at Leicester City, but the best was yet to come. Our 3-2 victory over Wolves at the end of that season put us in pole position in the automatic spots for promotion, and the hero will always be remembered as Colin Doyle. But Andy Cole's opening goal was a devilish chip that no one else in our team could have done. Links to the highlights in the description. 1 goal, 1 assist, that's all it was for Andy, but it was those small contributions that got us back into the Premier League, where we would stay forever. Oh shit. Speaking of small contributions with massive impact, it's Oba Martins coming in at number 9. What can I say about St. Oba that hasn't already been said? He scored the most important goal in our history and will forever be remembered as a legend. His name sung for years to come. However, his injury soon after the League Cup final meant we really missed out on his unquestionable talent and goals. Goals that would really have come in handy as we struggle for survival. Despite making only 4 league appearances with 0 goals, he'll always have a special place in our hearts, and that 1 goal was good enough to get him on this list. Number 8, Chris Wood. Old Woody did a pretty good job for Blues, netting 9 goals in 23 league games, which really isn't bad for a very young striker at the time. However, it's not his league goals he'll be remembered for, although a hat-trick against Millwall is always nice. His most famous contribution was, of course, the winning goal away at Club Brugge to send the away support into absolute delirium. For a club starved of success, these European nights were the stuff of dreams, and his deft right-footed flick into the top of the net will never be forgotten. It's really a shame we couldn't keep him beyond January, but he put in a really good shift for that half a season and fully earned his spot in 8th place. 7th place, Federico Macheda. Now Macheda was a fan favourite before he even signed for the club, having scored in his debut for United against the Scum. He didn't quite turn into the next Ronaldo, but he was a good marksman at Championship level, and his goals were vital to our survival that season. He joined his fellow United players Tyler Blackett and Tom Thorpe, and to say he was the best of the bunch would be a huge understatement. He kept with tradition and scored in his debut, netting 10 goals in 18 games for us. Certainly the best record on this list so far, which I realise at the time of writing contains only strikers so far. That will change slightly. Number 6. Da da da, John Toral, John Toral. Da da da, John Toral, John Toral. Da 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 da, John Toral, John Toral. Me and my mates tried to make that song work when we had John Toral on loan under Gary Rowett. Perhaps we can still make it happen if Toral stays when the fans return. Now, those of you who've only seen the current iteration of Dartol Ranus will probably think he's not that good. He hasn't really set the world alight this year and ended up exiled to the Outer Rim by he who shall not be named. Now I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and blame management on that, as when we had him on loan before, he was excellent. He could shoot, head and pass as good as anyone on the team, working as the team's main creative outlet and linking up very nicely with Demarai Gray and David Cotterill. Unfortunately, it became obvious he was not going to stay the next season, and we brought in another loanee who just hasn't made the list. He may not be the player he was back then, but if he recaptures some of his tenacity from his loan spell, we could have a real player on our hands. May the force be with you, John. Number 5, and we're getting to the good stuff. Joe Hart. Hart was simply fantastic when playing for Blues. A magnificent cog in the Alex McLeish defensive machine that was the Invincibles. He's the best I've ever seen at Blues, and that's saying something as we've had some fantastic keepers over the years. This was old Joe's big chance to shine and he took it with both gloves. The following season he'd be first choice of Man City and it wouldn't be long before he was lifting the Premier League and cementing his place as England's #1. We wouldn't have had such a good season without him, but I also believe his career wouldn't have progressed so well without his time at Blues. Hopefully he can have his own career resurgence in the future, possibly on loan at Blues. Why not? 4. Christian Chucho Benitez. It always saddens me to bring up Chucho. He was a joy to watch and very underrated by the powers that be at the club. Although he lacked goals, his skills, strength and intensity were a nightmare to deal with. He brought other players into the game and gave us an edge that we just wouldn't have had without him. The greatest beneficiary of Benitez's workmanship was Cameron Jerome, who managed to score 11 Premier League goals that year, which may not sound like a lot, but this is Cameron Jerome we're talking about. Our illustrious owners attempted to renegotiate the previously agreed deal and talks fell through, so we didn't sign him permanently, something that I consider to be a massive mistake. Rest in peace Chucho, we'll never forget you. 3rd place, and finally some royalty on this list, Lord Bendtner himself. Jolly old St Nicholas of Denmark arrived on loan with Sebastian Larsson and Fabrice Muamba at a time when our relations with Arsenal were good, the pre-Eduardo era. At least one of those players would have been on this list had they not signed permanently immediately after and carried on playing exactly as they had before. However, between the three of them, the Count of Bendtner was clearly the star of the show. He had a great touch, an excellent eye for goal and impressive heading ability. Like many players after him, he linked up very well with Sebastian Larsson and also with the other star of the season, Gary McSheffrey, who's currently coaching the under-18s at Doncaster, for those who are interested. The one problem Bendtner had was that his ambitions were large and his head was even larger. Although for the first half of the season he was deadly for us, rumour had it that he desperately wanted to return to Arsenal mid-season and Wenger said no. As a result, his performances dropped and he stopped banging in the goals regularly. Despite this fact, he led the line and ultimately his goals took us back to the Premier League. Number 2, Christophe Dugarry. Now before you start, I am aware of the fact that we immediately signed him after his loan spell, which by the rules of my list should discount him. However, the player that we signed permanently was nowhere near the man who we had on loan, and that man was nothing short of magical. As a young boy, he was used to the likes of Jeff Horsfield, Clinton Morrison and Dele Adebola, nothing wrong with that. Dugarry was mind-blowing. I'd never seen a player at St Andrews with so much skill, such style, such panache. Moving on. It took him some time to get his goals, and when he did, it was a joyous time. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have stayed up without him, because he wasn't the only contributor, but he made it comfortable and he made it fun. His header against Sunderland was cute, his back heel at the Valley, divine. The free kick versus Southampton, simply magnificent, not to mention his delightful volley against Middlesbrough. That season was incredible, and I doubt there are many seasons in the history of Blues that were more enjoyable for the fans. Before we get to first place, some honourable mentions who arguably deserve to be on this list. Ravel Morrison, a misunderstood young man with incredible talent. His career has been one problem after another, but for a time at Blues, he was excellent and looked every bit of the player he promised to be. Fair play to Lee Clark for getting a tune out of him when other managers failed. Jesse Lingard. 4 goals in his debut was almost enough to get him on the list, however he didn't score many after that, and although I liked him, we've got enough strikers on this list already. Good to see his career is getting back on track. Thomas Myra. Remember him? Didn't think so. On loan in the 99-2000 season, very solid, saved a few pens, but sadly due to our disastrous playoff defeat to Barnsley, which I still hate them for, he will be forgotten to the annals of time. Still, a very good keeper. Boaz Myhill, another keeper who did a fantastic job for us, and maybe I'm being harsh for not putting him on the list. Really was Mr. Consistent, and if he'd been fit in the playoffs, we may well have gone up that year. Doyle. Jordan Ibe. Although I didn't really think he was that amazing for Blues, his performance against Bolton on the last day of the season galvanised the team, and if it wasn't for him, we may well have ended up in League One. Last honourable mention is Jermaine Pennant. I ummed and ahed about putting him on the list, although he somewhat falls into the category of immediately signing post-loan. He still deserves a mention. His loan season was fantastic, and the fact that he went to prison mid-season makes him all the more interesting. He'd go on to be our best player the next season, a season which, to be honest, was not very enjoyable. Nevertheless, Pennant really made his mark at St Andrews. Okay then, finally, the number 1 Blues signing. It is, of course, Mikael Forrssell. On loan during the 03-04 season, he was incredible. The best striker? No. The best player I've ever seen at Blues. If he got the ball near the goal, he was scoring. His rapid feet made him unstoppable to defenders, and he wasn't bad in the air either. You just have to look at the numbers. 17 goals in 32 games is an absolutely unbelievable return for a Blues player in the Premier League, and we've never had anyone with as good a return since in any league. Even Che Adams had a lower strike rate in the Championship. His injury was very sad, and I'm sure he would have gone on to great things had it not happened to him. It wouldn't have been for Blues, as I'm sure other richer clubs would have snapped him up, but it wasn't to be. Of course we did sign him back, but he wasn't the same. He did still have an eye for goal, and he scored our only ever Premier League hat-trick, but he just didn't quite have those lightning feet anymore. Nevertheless, that one season and that incredible scoring run makes him the best loan signing that we've ever had. And that's the end of the list. Let me know your thoughts below in the comments. I've linked some footage of the players listed in the description to remind yourselves of how good these players were. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to TCFC. Thanks for watching and keep right on to the end of the road.